Have you left a toxic relationship and wondered if you would be able to spot another toxic person in the future? Are you scared that you won't be able to trust your gut instinct? Or do you not understand why you didn't trust your gut instinct in the first place? If you've asked yourself any of those questions, then you're going to want to watch this video. In today's video, I want to talk about our gut instinct, what it is, why we don't listen to it, and how we can change that. If you watch until the end of the video, I'm going to talk about two of the biggest mistakes people often make when they want to start trusting their gut instinct, but they do this instead. In my coaching practice, a lot of people will tell me, Michele, I don't think that I can spot toxic people. I don't think I have the ability. There's something wrong with me. And often I'll ask them, okay, well, let's look back to the beginning of the relationship, of the last toxic relationship you were in. Were there any red flags? And 99.9 of the times, in fact, I don't think I've ever heard anyone tell me, no, there were no red flags. They'll always say yes. As a matter of fact, this is something I noticed. As a matter of fact, this was a red flag that I noticed. So then I'll ask them, were there any other toxic relationships that you were in? And when they say yes, I'll ask them if there were any red flags there. And again, they say yes. So there's not a problem noticing red flags. The problem comes from not trusting your gut instinct. So what is our gut instinct? It's not just a feeling. It's not just an emotion. It's actually the combination of our mind, our body, and our emotions. Those three elements combined with every interaction we've ever lived, every person we've ever met, every expression we've ever read, every consequence of any relationship or any decision we've ever been in. In other words, it's those three elements combined with anything and everything we've ever gone through that's stored in our subconscious mind. When you realize exactly what the gut instinct is, we realize why it's so valuable and why we need to start trusting it. So let's move on to why we don't in the first place. And as much as I want to live in the here and now, in the present moment, the fact is that we learned to not trust our gut instinct, not in the current relationship that we were in, not in any toxic romantic relationship that we were in, but actually we were disconnected or we lost the ability to trust our gut instinct way back when we were kids. The majority of people that wound up in relationships with toxic people usually realize that that wasn't their first toxic relationship. In fact, they realize that they grew up in a toxic family dynamic situation. So with toxic parents, the teaching that we received, the programming that we received, didn't help us to strengthen our gut instinct or our connection to our gut instinct. It taught us to ignore it. So for example, if I was sad and I had toxic parents, I was told, why are you sad? There's something wrong with you for being sad. If I was happy, I shouldn't have been happy because something else was going on that needed someone's attention, and I should have known that, and I should not have been happy. If I had my feelings hurt and I expressed, hey, that hurts my feelings when you call me those names, I was disrespectful and a bad kid for even bringing those things up. That's just to mention a few of the things that toxic parents do to innocent children. And what happens is our programming winds up learning that listening to your gut, listening to yourself, or paying attention to you is bad. It brings about negative results. And so if we were to compare our gut instinct to a muscle, what happens is by not listening to it, by not paying attention to it, that muscle gets weaker and weaker. It's not gone completely, but it gets overridden in our mind. That's why we often have two voices inside of our mind when we want to make a decision. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm going to place the scenario before you guys. And if this resonates with you, let me know below if you've experienced this. So let's say you meet somebody, right? And your first voice that comes into your mind tells you, there's something wrong with this person. Something isn't quite right. I don't like the way I feel around this person. That's your first voice, right? The second voice says, oh, Michele, you're being too sensitive, or you're always, looking at things the wrong way, or you're just judging too soon. You shouldn't view people like that. And that second voice winds up being the voice that we listen to. Well, guess where that second voice came from? More often than not, that is the internalized voice of our parents. Every time we listened to ourselves, every time we paid attention to ourselves, and our parent came and told us that was wrong, or that was bad, or there's something wrong with us for thinking that way or feeling that way. So now we've internalized it, and now, even if we are out of our parents' house, we still treat ourselves the way they treated us. We still don't allow ourselves to connect with ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to listen to ourselves or pay attention to ourselves. We're always externally focused. So far we've talked about what the gut instinct is and why we don't listen to it. Now let's talk about what you can do to change it. Our gut instinct, like I said earlier, is like a muscle. The less we listen to ourselves, the weaker that inner voice is. And so the opposite will be true too. If we begin to notice that voice and listen to it and not allow the second voice to come in and sabotage our connection to ourselves, that will strengthen that inner gut instinct. So now let's talk about two of the mistakes that people make when they are out of toxic relationships and they want to trust their gut instinct. These are two mistakes that I see over and over again. The first one is thinking that you need to learn to trust your gut only when you meet someone. In other words, in order to determine if this person is toxic or not. That would be equivalent to going to the gym once every 2 weeks, or once a month, or even once a week. You're working that muscle, but it's certainly not enough to see lasting results or lasting change. So rather than wait until you meet somebody that you think might be a potential significant other, rather than waiting till that moment to listen to your gut instinct, if you did so on a daily basis, not just in big decisions, but in small decisions, if you start paying attention to yourself, valuing yourself, and then listening to yourself and showing yourself that you're listening with your actions, that's when you begin to strengthen that gut instinct. And the second mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they will ask someone else's opinion. They'll say, okay, I felt a little weird around this person, but what about you? Do you see what I see? Do you notice that or no? The problem with that is that person is being guided by those three elements, their mind, their body, and their emotions, but it's combined with their past knowledge and experience of what they have experienced in life. And let me tell you, if somebody has not been in a relationship with a toxic person, an emotional manipulator, with a narcissistic person, if they've never known that personality type, they are not going to see the red flags that you will see. Because remember, those three elements are combined with your history of what you've learned. And since you've been around toxic people, your perception is going to be different than theirs. That's why that's a mistake. They may not notice covert abuse. They may not even know what covert abuse looks like or feels like. So if you're going to allow somebody else's opinion to be your guide as opposed to your gut instinct that knows what you've been through, that knows emotional manipulation, then you're going to wind up steering yourself wrong again. Our gut instinct is an amazing part or piece of who we are. How are you treating your gut instinct? Something I tell the people that I coach often is I'll ask them, I'll say, imagine if I'm your best friend, and every time you have a decision to make, I give you the absolute best advice based on evidence, based on facts, advice that will never steer you wrong, and I'm always giving it to you, and you never listen to me. How am I going to feel? And they always tell me, you're probably not going to like being my friend very much. And it's true. Would you want to be around somebody that never listened to you, never valued you, never cared about what you thought of the situation, ignored you when you gave your advice, didn't even take it into consideration, but rather silenced you? How would you feel about that? If you answered negatively, make sure that you're not doing that with your gut instinct. Because once you start strengthening it, it is an amazing compass that can help you spot toxic people. All you have to do is trust it and listen to it.